You're listening to the Misfit Therapist podcast with Dr. A, where it's all about talking through some messy psych shit so we can all get better soon. This show is not intended to diagnose or treat mental health disorders, nor is it a substitution for mental health services. Please seek counseling, medication, or crisis intervention services if needed.
Hello, Misfits. This is episode 9. We are calling this Love is Pure and You Are Not Part 2. We are specifically talking about attachment styles, problems I help couples through, and a very brief mention of the 5 love languages as requested by you. We are building on part 1, which covered the things that we are forced to face in a romantic relationship, where I pointed out that people are fallible and love is not. So let's get right into it today. We have big ideas to cover in bite-sized pieces and in microwave time. The want to connect, to seek love, support, and comfort is human nature. Our need to belong is incredibly important, and frankly, it's what drives us to do what we do personally and professionally. Cultivating strong relationships is also part of how we survive. No one can do life on their own. Although sometimes we feel like we've done it alone, it is because of these things that we are moved to be in a romantic relationship. I've mentioned this before. We bring our entire lives into a relationship, and that includes attachment styles. So, what are attachment styles? Okay, I'm about to get a little geeky, but it's important that you know a bit about where attachment theory came from. Attachment theory dates back to the 1950s, and the person responsible for this theory is John Bowlby. Bowlby was a British psychologist and psychiatrist, so in short, a brilliant man. So what did he pioneer? What did he say about attachment? In brief, your relationship with your parents or caregivers during childhood directly impacts your social and intimate relationships down the line. Your relationship with your caregivers sets the stage for how you will build relationships as an adult. Okay, so what are the 4 attachment styles? They are anxious, disorganized, avoidant, and secure. Let's start off with the anxious attachment style. For those with an anxious attachment style, their partner is their everything, their other half. The thought of living without their partner causes them extreme distress and high levels of anxiety. This type of attachment is associated with having a negative self-image, but oddly enough, a positive view of their partners and others. Those who have this type of attachment style, they need approval, support, and validation from their partner. People with this attachment style value their relationships, but they often question if their partner feels the same way. Fear of abandonment is very present, and safety is a priority. The anxiety that an anxious person feels decreases when their partner gives them attention, care, and expresses love. When an anxious type does not get the above, they tend to get clingy, demanding, and desperate for love. Next up is the disorganized, or what they call the fearful type. Those who have a disorganized attachment tend to display either unstable or even ambiguous behaviors toward their relationship and social bonds. For adults with this style of attachment, their partner and the relationship elicits tremendous fear. What's interesting is that these types want a relationship, they desire closeness and intimacy, but their trust issues are so great that it gets in the way of connecting with others. Oftentimes, these types are unable to regulate their emotions, which leads them to avoid emotional attachments and, in their minds, protects them from getting hurt, which again is what they fear the most. Next up, we have the avoidant type, and the avoidant type can cause a lot of confusion. They're actually called the avoidant or dismissive type. These people see themselves as emotionally not needing anyone. They see themselves as emotionally strong and self-sufficient. Notice I said they see themselves. I'm not saying others see them this way. These people have a solid sense of self-esteem and a positive view of themselves. They don't feel like they need to be in a relationship to be happy. Sounds super positive, right? Not exactly. These individuals, they don't want to depend on others, and in turn, they don't want others to depend on them. They don't want to seek support, and they don't want to be tied down to the approval of others. Adults with this attachment style generally avoid emotional closeness, and they tend to hide their feelings. They suppress their emotions, and they omit how they feel unless pressured. These types do not manage deep and complex emotional situations very well. In fact, if a situation is seen as emotionally dense or heavy, they disappear, they run, they ghost. So, the attachment styles that we've discussed thus far are characterized by difficulties with cultivating and maintaining healthy relationships. In contrast, the fourth attachment style, the secure type, is characterized by complete comfort in expressing emotions openly, being comfortable with depending on partners and vice versa, and also being okay with not depending on anyone. The secure type honors and wants honesty, transparency, tolerance, and emotional closeness. The secure attachment type thrives in relationships. They make amazing partners, but they also don't fear being alone. These types tend to have a positive view of themselves and others. They're okay with not getting constant praise from their partners because they know who they are. So I'll share a little bit with you about me. I am the secure type. Sounds pretty awesome, right? Well, yes and no. Because I am secure in myself and I know that I can hold my own, I have no problem entertaining people and falling in love with those who fall into other categories with regard to attachment, and that can become incredibly problematic. I have seen secure types take on projects or people, partners that need a lot of help and assistance and emotional support, which also ends up being detrimental to the secure type because they give a lot and don't always get their needs met. So, what now? What do we do with what we've just learned? Which style resonated with you? Do you feel like you have traits from more than one type? Which one dominates? Which type can you identify that you have dated or maybe are with right now or are even married to? By the way, attachment styles can change with major life events, growth, or even with different partners. Let me give you an example. I'll bring the secure type back up. Let's say a secure type bumps into an avoidant type who also happens to have narcissistic traits. What do you think is going to happen to that secure type? Not getting their needs met and also bumping into some pathology is going to start to make them fearful and anxious, mimicking more the anxious attachment style versus their own secure style. What I want you to know about attachment theory is that things don't have to be hard. There are many ways to heal and recover from attachment disturbances, but it usually requires professional help and or mentorship. Okay, speaking of things, let me briefly review what I help couples with when they come in to see me. The number one thing, improving communication. I teach them a little formula. I teach my clients to speak directly and with purpose, followed by acts and facts, how whatever it is that they are talking about or the incident made them feel, and what they hope the outcome will be. Let me give you an example. I want to talk to you about the other night. During dinner, I felt like you snapped at me and you said the following. It made me feel sad. And the reason that I'm bringing this to your attention is because I value our relationship and I want to be genuinely okay. So, what have we done there? We spoke clearly and directly with purpose. We named the acts and facts. The other night at dinner, you said something that was hurtful. We talked about how it made us feel and what we want our outcome to be. The next thing that I help couples with is building empathy and respect. I always ask my couples, have you considered your partner's point of view? What role did you play in what occurred? What could have gone differently? Was this situation a one-off or isolated, or does it happen often? Did you engage in the use of inappropriate words or cruel behavior? Those are the things that we work on in order to build empathy and respect. The next thing that we're working on is learning effective problem solving and conflict resolution skills. Are we sitting down and making time to talk about the issue without any distractions or input from a third party? Are we doing our homework? Are we possibly listing the pros and cons of a decision that needs to be made? Are we appropriately using a cooling off period? Let me talk about the cooling off period for a second. There are people that obviously get incredibly worked up, or it could just be a situation that's very heated and both partners need a cooling off period. That is totally okay, but I need you to communicate that with each other. It's not okay to just walk away or disappear. Simply say, I cannot do this right now. We'll revisit this in a couple of hours. I need time to cool off. But the key thing here is we must communicate, and we cannot leave our partners feeling abandoned. The next thing that I work with couples on is minimizing ineffective, threatening, and unproductive communication patterns. We have ground rules. You are never allowed to withhold love. No gaslighting, no stonewalling, no walking away without stating why, and no impulsively leaving the house. We must reduce power struggles. This is not a competition. When one partner is not in a good place, you both lose. Creating harmony and learning how to create harmony is incredibly important. Also, what are we working on? What are we working on in couples counseling? A lot of times couples come in and they don't even know. They just know that things have gotten really bad. So I always ask them, do you hope to recommit to the relationship, or are you looking to break up amicably? What is it? If you are looking at renewing the commitment to your relationship, I always ask, how long has it been since you have recommitted to yourselves as a couple? When was the last time that you both talked about your goals? Are you still on the same page? And do you even like each other right now? If the decision is to separate, divorce, break up, then we talk about, well, what will things look like? Finances, children, home. Can we begin to talk about these things in therapy in order to move to a more peaceful legal mediation if need be? We have talked about so much today: attachment styles, common problems, and how to go about them. And you know where the real magic is? It's in one word, and yet we seem to fuck this up all the time. The one word is understanding, which segues into my very brief explanation of the 5 love languages per your request. The 5 love languages concept was developed back in 1992 by Dr. Gary Chapman, who is actually a pastor. He was working with Christian couples when he developed this framework. So what is the 5 love languages? It's basically a framework that facilitates communication between couples. The original book was actually more about understanding your partner's love languages versus your own, but things have evolved since then, and so now it includes you as well. I'm an evidence-based practitioner, and I get this question all of the time. Is the 5 love languages evidence-based? Well, yes and no. There are studies on both sides of this framework, and some argue that it's helpful, others not. So what are the 5 love languages? They are quality time, physical touch, acts of service, gifts, and words of affirmation. When you actually take the 5 love languages quiz, it will rank them from most important to you to least important to you. So in wrapping things up today, I want you to take the love languages quiz and sit with it for a second. Did you get the results that you expected? Why do you believe that you got the results that you did? Let me know, comment, send me a DM, do whatever you'd like. We are done, you guys. Thanks so much for listening and coming back week after week. I hope that these mental health snippets continue to help you in some way. I can't thank you enough for continuing to share and spread the love with your friends and family. Thank you so much for showing up for me. Continue to connect with me by going to themisfittherapist.com and on Facebook and Instagram. Till next time.
Thank you for listening to the Misfit Therapist podcast. Show some love by sharing this message and simply by living each day like a badass.